Well, it's been highly requested. I talk about a little government update in the United States. If I understand correctly, it's very possible that in a short period of time, transporting pretty much any exotic animal across state lines or importing or exporting it to and from the United States will be illegal. Basically, if you don't want to hear it from me and you just want to see it at the source more simply, you can check the link in the description to USARK, where they lay it all out and also give information on who you can contact and how to do so. But if you do want to hear me blab on about it, let's get into it, shall we? I will admit, I'm just slightly confused because I've gotten so many emails telling me about this, but everyone describes it a little bit differently. But I think I have a general grasp on how it works. So basically, the government's doing what it does best, which is control you. They're just not always that good at it. However, there's it's about 3,000 pages. It's a big old document that most recently passed the U.S. House of Representatives and is moving on to the Senate. And then after that, if it passes, it gets put on Ice Cream Man's desk for him to sign and approve it. So the main gist of this document isn't actually at all related to reptiles. In fact, it's 3,000 pages. There's a lot of things in the document that are not actually at all related to what it is primarily based around. But the nice thing about stuff like this is you can slip in lots of little things. And one of the things slipped in was some Lacey Act related things involving pretty much any animal that's not a dog, cat, or an animal that's eaten or harvested. Think exotic mammals, birds, fish, reptiles, and amphibians. Now, there is a little bit of irony in this because I just recently did a video saying how I don't really want to continue my business that, well, ships reptiles across state lines. I like to think that the president himself has been watching my videos and he's like, I could take care of that, and literally just sends me to prison for continuing to do business. Now, I know the old man himself did not write this document. After all, it is pretty long and I don't even know if he's actually literate or not. But at the end of the day, that would be the final step to send it on its way. Now, don't panic about it simply because, well, you're being kind of useless by panicking. If you do wish to, and if you're in the United States, you can find your local senators and find their contact information. And first, be nice. If you need some templates to contact them, you can use the stuff that they have on USARK. So basically, to be more specific, I believe how it works is that there would be a whitelist of animals that would be allowed. But there's of course no guarantees anything's going to be added to the whitelist. Instead of there being a blacklist of these animals are not allowed, you'd have to add every single little species that you want to keep to this whitelist if you're going to move it over state lines. So it would not become illegal to own the thing, but then again, almost every single animal that you and I are keeping have crossed state lines to get to where they are now. Most reptiles especially have been crossed over state lines, so it's not like, well, whatever, I'll just get it locally because, well, they are very rarely actually local. Not to mention, I think this also affects feeder insects, which would be kind of a pain. But yeah, even though I think if you spend all your time in the reptile community, it can feel like a pretty big community, but at the end of the day, it's a pretty small community. And if you want my honest opinion, once you give a government control, they're not going to give it back. You got to kind of like not let them have the control in the first place. Once it's there, it's gone. You can say bye-bye to that control. It's ultimately, you cannot do very much about it. You can't vote on it. You can't all you can basically do is try and persuade your local representatives who do have a vote. Even if it's a tiny vote, it's at least a little something. And there'll be resources in the description to find those people. If you need some sort of motivation, just think that you'll never see another unboxing video again. Because what am I going to unbox? Just an empty box with the same 3 animals every time? Because basically nobody actually works with me locally. I pretty much only work with people in California, Texas, New York, and Florida, like the far corners of the country. And even if I couldn't ship, well, guess what? I can't even drive there and bring them back because that would also be illegal. And again, there's so many people that have contacted me about this and so many videos about it that everyone is saying something a little bit different, which also just kind of shows how complicated it can all become when I can't even get a straight explanation from a singular community, probably partially because things like this are oftentimes made complicated and unclear and indistinct, because that gives more control when enforcing it, because you can kind of morph it to how you just might happen to need it to apply in a certain situation. So to read off of the USARK site, this would ban the interstate transport of species listed as injurious. This means you cannot take a pet with you if you move to another state or seek specialized veterinary medical care across state lines. All interstate commerce and even educational programs across state lines would be banned. This would create a white list. This means only those species listed are allowed of species that can be imported. This means that any animal that is not on the white list, whether it be a reptile, amphibian, fish, bird, or mammal, is by default treated as potentially injurious and banned from importation. This would establish a new authority, including the Fish and Wildlife Services, to use an emergency designation that becomes effective immediately after being published in the Federal Register. That means no due process, public input, hearings, advance notice, etc. for injurious listings. That means interstate transport could be shut down overnight without any warning for any species. Since we've previously beheld unreasonable and prejudiced injurious listings, this new emergency designation is beyond disturbing. This would also create immense potential for trickle-down legislation in which individual states ban even the possession of listed species. As we've already witnessed, even if an injurious species cannot possibly survive in that state. And this would taint injurious listings with, quote, look-alike, unquote, carryover, as we've seen with the Endangered Species Act listing. Species may be listed as injurious simply because they look like another species. Even if they cannot survive in the United States climate, they would be labeled as injurious solely due to appearance. Can we really expect a Fish and Wildlife Service agent to differentiate hundreds of gecko species? People do ask me, this isn't super related, but people ask me, like, what do you think about more regulation in the reptile community? And I think there is some misunderstanding that I believe regulation is good for the reptile community based on my spider ball python video. That's actually, I should have explained better in that video what I was actually arguing. What we were arguing in that video was the right of a private company to regulate what comes in and out of their reptile show. We weren't arguing for any legal side. It was purely a private expo that did not want a certain type of animal in their building, and I argued that they should be allowed to do that, and the reasons behind that. People took that to mean that there should be regulation, and even though there is certainly plenty of issues in the community, like there is in any community, I don't think any of us believe that the United States government or anyone within it would have any idea on how to possibly make it any better. But ultimately, it's people that have very little knowledge on the subject that have the most control over the subject. So that's that. Hopefully that made sense at the end of the day. Just gotta kind of roll with the punches and see what happens, I guess. I mean, what else are you gonna do? It's the government. But you can check out more on USARK with information on how to contact your peeps if you're in the United States. If you're not in the US, well, I don't know why you're still here. But that's it. I'm Alex, and thanks for watching.